this story, I can always go up to youtube.com/The Midnight Shadow Line if you'd like to see some more videos of a similar vein. Now it's out the way. Let's see if I got time to tell y'all a little story. This is a story about dipping your toe into black magic and why you should not do that, if at all possible. I used to translate Latin. I took Latin in school, and when I got bored, sometimes late at night, I would translate Latin, like find little passages on the internet, just something to do. Well, this one, whatever you want to call it, was supposed to be a protection spell, but it turned out to be more like an incantation, or I guess I should say an invocation. And it basically talked about the fallen ones and how basically with the knowledge of man and the powers bestowed upon the fallen ones from God, that basically you didn't need God, that you could call on the fallen ones and they would give you whatever you want, and that basically there's no need for God. Well, the further it went on, the darker it got, and I didn't much like the sound of it, so I stopped translating it, didn't really think much about it. Well, I don't know if it was that night or a couple nights later, whatever, I'm asleep in bed, and I feel two sets of bony hands grab me by the ankles and jerk me, start pulling me out of the bed, so I think I'm getting robbed, right? So I go reaching, scrambling under the pillow, trying to get what I got under there, can't get to it. So I raise up, start punching, flailing. Don't seem to hit anything. And by the time I sit all the way up, my legs are about 2 feet off the bed. Well, from about the knee down, my legs are hanging off the end of the bed. Actually, my legs are still straight at that point. And then it just stops. And I realize I'm in a bolted room with the doors locked. Right? And then I start having these really intense dreams at night. These violent dreams where I'd be walking with some woman. Sometimes it'd be somebody I knew. Sometimes it wouldn't be anybody I knew. And I would just at some point attack this person, or this person would come at me and I would attack this person, and there would just be, let's just say it was violent, right? And every time I went to sleep, this would happen. And then I'd wake up and you'd see this figure up against the wall, right? Just standing there. Well, eventually it would start sort of moving around the room, and then eventually it would start moving laterally up the walls, across the floor, the ceiling, different things. So that's how it started. So you couldn't really sleep, but you couldn't stand to stay awake. Well, eventually we moved from that place and we moved to another place. And I'm having a party one night, and I hear like a church bell toll, like in the hallway that connects all the rooms of the apartment. And I thought, maybe I don't know, just misheard something, whatever, right? And my pal Jimmy, I was having a party, like I said, and he was sitting on the love seat, but he was sitting directly in front of this hallway as I was standing there. And so I sat down beside Jimmy, and I'm like, Jimmy. And before I could say anything, he's like, hold on, man. Am I tripping? Or did you just hear a fucking church bell? And I'm like, no, I heard it. And this was like 1:30 in the morning. Not on a Sunday, but even if it was, we don't live in the kind of place where there would be church bells at 1:30 in the morning anywhere. Then we start to see I would start to see white figures on the outside of the patio doors of the main room of the apartment. And they would just sort of drift back and forth, like figures of, I guess, people, sort of, but they were sort of translucent, but white and luminous. So that kept going on. And let's see, one time I went to take out the trash. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and there was this animal that walked up. It was about maybe 30, 40 feet from me. And the only way I can describe it is it had the body of a mountain lion, or like a big cat, but it had the head of a Rottweiler, but its body and its tail very much moved like a feline. And it gets about halfway, and it slowly, he slowly sort of turns his head, and he looks at me intensely, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like he wanted me to follow him, right? Well, he takes another couple strides, and he's on the other side of this van in the parking lot. And so I'm trying to figure out if I can make it to one building or the other without getting mauled to death, because I don't have anything on me to defend myself with, especially not against a wild animal. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And so I kind of moved up a little bit, where I could see. And when I got to the van, there was no animal behind the van, but yet no animal had come out, nor was there an animal on the other side. Well, that's another thing that happened. Then I started hearing these screams. Like, I took my dog out one night, and just this visceral scream. Like, it sounded like this woman was getting ready to come around the door with a hammer and, like, beat me with it. So I took a step or two back, and the dog didn't seem to hear anything. He went on about his business, walking down the sidewalk, wagging his tail, didn't seem to hear anything. Protective dog, so that was very unusual. So I get to thinking about it, and I take a couple steps forward, and I start looking around outside, don't see anything, and I start to focus on this one tree. And I felt like there was somebody or something behind the tree, but there wasn't. But I kept watching this tree, and the yard was backlit. There's a light pole behind the yard that sort of backlit the yard. And about that time, I see a bird walk up to the edge of a branch, open its wings, and step off the branch and start gliding. I'm thinking anything about it. I'm looking down at it, looking at the shadow, look up, there's no bird. Look down, still see the shadow gliding across the ground. Look up, no bird. So, you explain that one to me. And those screams, I've heard those several times. I'm not the only one that's heard them. There's another instance where we all heard it, and we actually started walking down the alley in the middle of the night looking for people, or I did, to see, or several of us did, see if there's somebody that needed help. Of course, there was nobody. And this other time, we lived at a trailer on the end of this country road, and we heard that scream outside, a very similar scream, and it was so bad that I went outside with a battle rifle with the bayonet out, and one in the chamber, thinking that somebody was getting killed or hurt or something outside. Well, after that scream, immediately, it sounded like what I can only describe as like a 55-gallon drum, like rolling down the side of the trailer, and then when it gets about halfway, it sort of rolls underneath the house and clatters all the way down to the end of the trailer. And my girlfriend at the time is on the other end of the trailer, and she starts hollering, "Did I hear that sound?" I'm like, "Yeah, I heard it, but I couldn't figure out what it was." And so I got the rifle, went outside, couldn't find anything, and then I started to notice bad things started to happen to people that wronged me. People that just had done bad things to me. Bad things would start to happen to those people without any influence from me. So I don't know if that was a side effect of it. Still happens a little bit here and there. Every once in a while I still get a little strange side effect from it, but mostly it's subsided, except for the bad things happening to people that wrong me. And I don't know what that's about. I'm assuming it's connected. But yeah, people, maybe stay away from black magic. It's not sure what could come from it, but I think the good that can come from it ain't worth all the bad that goes with it. But I guess y'all are grown or not, but it's a choice. Like old gravedigger said, it's a choice. It's a daily choice. And keep on keeping on. Keep your toes out the dark water. Once again, you like the story? YouTube /The Midnight Shadow Line. Y'all have a good one.